Hello everyone, welcome back. So today's episode is going to be about calcium, so you can guess that calcium is going to make an appearance very soon on this channel, so definitely look forward to that. Anyway, let's go ahead and get on into this one. Calcium is element number 20 on the periodic table of elements. It is an alkaline earth metal with a melting point of 1,548 degrees Fahrenheit or 842 Celsius. It is the fifth most abundant element on Earth and the third most abundant metal after iron and aluminum. Calcium possesses a Mohs hardness of 1.75, which makes it harder than lead, but still possible to cut with a knife, with considerable effort. Because of how common calcium compounds are, calcium has been used for pretty much forever. I mean, it's limestone, it's everywhere. I mean, it was even used in the creation of the Great Pyramids at Giza, which I might remind you, Cleopatra, who existed sometime a little bit prior to the 1st century AD, is closer in time to the invention of the iPhone than to the building of the Great Pyramids at Giza. So that just should give you an idea of just how long people have been using calcium for. The name calcium is derived from the Latin term for lime, which is something along the lines of like calx or something like that. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce it. C-A-L-X, if that gives you any hints for any of you who know Latin. Calcium, though, as a metal was first refined by Sir Humphrey Davy in 1808. He used a combination of mercury oxide, calcium oxide, and magnesium oxide, put them all together, heated them up, and used electrolysis to essentially just sort of separate it out as one might separate out gold using a mercury amalgam. This worked great for separating the metal originally, but the common commercial practices that are used now, which involve aluminum, didn't come about until quite a bit later. Calcium has a high affinity for oxygen and easily forms compounds like calcium oxide, calcium carbonate. Calcium chloride is another one that likes to form. It just really likes to bunch up with a lot of those non-metals and such and form these really interesting, very useful compounds, but in the case of metallurgy, it's a little bit more debatable when you're trying to get a good alloy going, and, well, I digress. Calcium, as such, can be a very effective reducer. Calcium does have a lot of really important compounds that we use to this day. I mean, cement is literally all around you. That's mainly made up of calcium oxide, calcium hydroxide, little bit of silica, but yeah, stuff like that. And it's actually a very useful thing to have those compounds around. Another interesting use for calcium that I didn't really know about until quite recently was actually for one of its isotopes, calcium-48. It is technically a radioactive isotope of calcium, although it has a half-life that is absolutely astronomical. In fact, actually, calcium's a pretty stable element. It has like 5 stable isotopes, 6 that are naturally occurring, and calcium-48 is that 6th one that isn't necessarily stable, but is naturally occurring. Calcium-48 is actually used to create new elements, all the way from flavorium to oganesson, from what I understand. And so it's very useful in the context of, particle accelerators and such. And so I'll go into that one a little bit more, probably in the next video when I start giving you guys a background of what I'm about to do. Another use for calcium, which is going to sort of lead us into biological function and toxicity, is in Antacid Tablets. Now, this is a rather mundane use for such an interesting element, but it's also one of its best, most practical uses. What it does is it's actually calcium carbonate they use, but what it does is it neutralizes the hydrochloric acid in the stomach, turning it into CO2, water, and calcium chloride, thus neutralizing the acid and just sort of bringing things a little bit into balance whenever things are a little bit upset in there. Calcium is also necessary in the diet. Of course, our bones are made a lot of calcium. When there is an overabundance of calcium in the body and the kidneys can't process it properly, it leads to the formation of these horrible little nuisances that can sometimes be very dangerous, called kidney stones. Those aren't fun. So, the toxicity of calcium is rather interesting. It's not really what you would expect for most of the metals that I cover whenever I'm talking about these metals. On the fire diamond, it has a blue number of 0, which means it's not particularly toxic pretty much at all. It's about as toxic as sand. However, this is metallic calcium we're talking about. There can be calcium compounds that are much worse, and also, as I said, an unusually high amount of calcium in the body can still cause problems, so do be aware of that. This isn't to say that calcium is 100% safe, because on that same fire diamond, it gets a 3 in that little red diamond, which means it is highly flammable. It also gets a 1 in the reactivity section, so calcium, because of its strong reactive, oxygen-sensitive properties, will react exothermically with acids, moisture, pretty much anything. So if it comes into contact with your skin, it's likely to cause some pretty bad irritation. I certainly would not recommend inhaling calcium dust. Even calcium oxide dust is pretty harmful to the lungs.
For those of you who don't know, this is extremely irritating to the senses. It will make you cough and sputter if you get any dust in the air, so I would recommend not doing this.
And when swallowed, calcium metal can also wreak havoc on the mouth, and probably everything else. So if you guys enjoyed this video, do like, subscribe, comment, give me some ideas for future videos. I could definitely use some of those. So with that, thank you guys for joining me. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.